If you won the first game of your fantasy season, it's probably because you had a big week from one or two players. Let's try to find out who might do that in week 2. These are our boom picks. And before you go to set those fantasy lineups, don't forget to set your pick'ems for this coming week on Underdog. If you haven't tried it yet, this is still a great time to do that because new customers who sign up using promo code ENDGAME, you get this new customer special, Josh Allen just needing 1 yard on Thursday night. That's right, if Josh Allen just gets higher than 0.5 total yards on Thursday night, you win that pick and you just need to combine it with any other pick, which we're going to give you some of our favorite picks at RB in this video. You also still get 50% deposit match up to $1,000 in bonus cash if you sign up now. Just make sure you use code ENDGAME when you sign up on Underdog. All right, Chris, start us off. Who's your first boom?
I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to absolutely boom this week at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. This Bengals defense just gave up 120 yards and a touchdown to Ramondre Stevenson behind this Patriots offensive line. And this Bengals offense, I don't think is going to be out there, forcing the Chiefs to throw the ball a ton. I mean, sure, the Chiefs are going to throw it because that's what they do, but they're still going to give Pacheco plenty of carries. He played 80% of the snaps last week, got almost all the opportunities in this backfield. Yeah, Samaje Perine may steal a catch or two, but he's not going to steal goal line carries, and he's not going to steal, high value carries either. Isaiah Pacheco had a nice game in week 1, but I think in week 2, he has a way better than a nice game, and I think he booms and is one of those players that helps you take home the victory in week 2.
I have a similar running back in mind, but first, I've got to get this out of the way. Let's talk about a wideout who you drafted early. I think is going to completely turn things around in week 2. Zay Flowers was among several Ravens, let's face it, most of them who weren't named Isaiah Likely, kind of underachieved in week 1. I think that they flipped the script against Vegas. They're at home. They're going to do much better. They're going to be able to run the ball, establish the run, but they're also going to be able to actually throw the ball down the field. Look, Kansas City has just got Baltimore's number. We know this. We know that they can blanket their receivers. They completely took Mark Andrews out. And while Zay Flowers did get a few grabs, I mean, it was all super short, near the line of scrimmage. No big plays down the field, although they did take some deep shots. They just weren't able to get it going. Look, they're going to force feed the ball to Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and really try to revitalize this passing game. Give Lamar Jackson a little boost of confidence here. Zay Flowers is a legit alpha receiver, and I think we're going to see that this week. Look, Vegas doesn't have the worst defense. It's not really just the matchup itself. They're fine. They're okay. There's not, any reason to think that they're going to be able to shut down a guy like Flowers. But look, Flowers is clearly the number 1 target here still. He had 10 targets in this game. Besides the fact that I do think he could have a big week, I also am absolutely smashing his pick'em on Underdog because he's only right now at 48.5 yards. If you go higher than that, I mean, to me, that's almost a gimme. And of course, if you are new to Underdog because you haven't tried it yet, you sign up for your account, use promo code ENDGAME. The very first thing you do is you get that free pick'em for this week, and then you can pair it up with any other pick you like. I like Zay Flowers going higher than 49 yards this week. So you put those together, you can add any more you like, and that's a good chance to win some money right off the bat. All right, you got another young receiver who you think will bounce back from a disappointing week 1.
I do. I think Tank Dell is set up for a big week in week 2. I know if you just look at the stats, you think, okay, Tank Dell, clearly the number 3 wide receiver here. Like, we can forget about Tank Dell, but you got to look a little bit deeper. He tied Nico Collins for the team lead with 7 targets. He had 105 air yards in this game, only 7 less than Nico Collins had. Meanwhile, the guy who most people probably think is the wide receiver 2 after week 1, Stephon Diggs, had a whopping 9 air yards. Now, I know Diggs got the touchdowns, and look, that's very valuable in fantasy, but you can't bank on Stephon Diggs catching a touchdown every week of the season. Everything is there for Tank Dell to have a huge game this week. Not to mention, I mean, the Bears, yes, this is a good defense, no doubt about it, but their stud corner, Jalen Johnson, probably going to be on Nico Collins most of this game. That's going to free up Tank Dell. Look, the other good corners probably going to be paying attention to Diggs. I think Tank Dell is going to get free in this game. I think he's going to hit on one of those big plays. If he's going to get 7 targets, 100 plus air yards, they're going to connect eventually. Him and CJ Stroud are too good. They're going to connect. Why couldn't it be in this game this week? And if they do connect, that's going to be huge for your fantasy team. So don't just look at the box scores and say, okay, Tank Dell number 3, ignore him. No, Tank Dell could have had a huge week 1. It just didn't happen. But this week, I think it does. He bounces back and has a huge week 2 and helps you win.
All right, let's get back to the running back position. You feel pretty secure with a guy like James Conner, clearly the lead back, pretty good offense. So in week 1, he was fine. Nothing crazy here. 50 yards rushing, 33 receiving. Did score a touchdown, so he was solid in fantasy. But again, not a guy who carried you, not a guy who went off. I think he could go off this week because going against the Rams, well, I mean, the Rams are a pretty good team, but like you mentioned, with Pacheco going against that Bengals defense, they're missing a vital part of their D-line. The Rams are missing a fairly important guy by the name of Aaron Donald. Look, this run defense was really good last year. In fact, they were technically the best against running backs in fantasy. And that is going to completely change because let's face it, that was the big difference. The rest of this defensive line here doesn't look too intimidating, and they didn't look that great last week against Detroit. Gave up 163 rushing yards to the Lions, and in fact, only one other team ran for more yards last week. So I do think that they are vulnerable against the run. You know that Arizona is going to be able to keep up with the Rams, especially now Puka Nacua out. This offense, I mean, they want to air it out, but are they really going to be able to? This is going to be a tight game. They're going to lean on Conner. They obviously don't have enough confidence in Marvin Harrison to pepper him with targets anymore. Look, I think Conner is the feature story here. He's going to have a good game, and he's the only act in town there when it comes to the backfield. Trey Benson is just an afterthought. Conner had 16 carries. Trey Benson, only 3. No other running backs touching the ball there. So he's a workhorse. He can catch the ball. He's got touchdown upside, good offense, and going against a defense that I feel is susceptible to the run. Yeah, I think Conner has a big week 2. Let's keep that workhorse theme going. Who else could put up huge numbers on the ground?
I think Josh Jacobs is going to have a big week this week against the Indianapolis Colts. And yeah, I know they're probably going to be starting, I don't know, Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill, who knows, somebody from the practice squad, which doesn't really give you a ton of confidence in this offense, but it gives me a ton of confidence in Josh Jacobs. I mean, you look at this Colts defense last week, Joe Mixon over 150 yards on 30 carries, and I think the Packers are just going to say, hey, let's just lean on Josh Jacobs. Let's let this guy try to carry us. Let's just try to keep the game close, utilize our defense. And Josh Jacobs, despite, having dirt thrown on him in the first half last year when he had 6 carries for 4 yards, looked very good in the second half. Looked explosive, looked healthy. So I think the Packers are going to lean on him this week. He's going to be the focal point of this offense. And look, at a minimum, no matter who the quarterback is in this game, he'll probably get some chintzy dump-offs, which will help you there. So I think Josh Jacobs, I love the way he looked at the end of the second half. I love the way he matches up against this Colts defense. And I think the Packers are going to rely on him and lean on him and give him a ton of touches in this game. So if you got Josh Jacobs and you're a little nervous about last week, don't worry about it. I think he's going to be great here in week 2.
Well, I feel a little bad last week. Doubted Brian Robinson Jr., been a fan of his. And look, he wasn't even the leading rusher on his team last week. But that's because Jaden Daniels did a lot more running than throwing, all right? Brian Robinson didn't have great numbers on the ground, 12 rushes for 40 yards, but he did score a touchdown, and he's been more involved as a receiver than we continue to expect. We think this guy can't catch passes. He can, and he does. 3 catches for 49 yards. In fact, he was the second leading receiver in Washington behind only Austin Eckler. Now, Austin Eckler, not a threat to B-Rob on the ground. Yeah, he'll catch some passes, but so will Brian Robinson. If you had noticed, this offense is not really going to be very pass heavy. They're going to continue to run the ball, and Robinson is the lead back, and he will also catch some dump offs because that's where they're at right now with Jaden Daniels, which is a good thing for Brian Robinson owners. Now, what's also a good thing? They're going to face the Giants. Yes, the Giants will not be able to put up very many points, although they are going against the Washington defense, but still. I feel pretty good that Washington will at least be in neutral game script. They'll be able to run the ball much more than they did last week. Robinson is a solid pick here as an RB2 and has the upside to have a big week. Now, on the other hand, there could be a giant worth starting as well.
Yes, not Daniel Jones, though. Sorry, everybody, not Daniel Jones. But this might be the only week I put Malik Neighbors on the Boom video, but This week, I really think Malik Neighbors is going to boom. So if you spent a relatively early round pick on him, get him in your lineup this week because he gets the Commanders. Look, even last week, despite how bad Daniel Jones was, despite the fact that Daniel Jones only threw a touchdown to the other team, he still had 5 catches for 66 yards. Not bad. But now he gets his Commanders defense that, let me read this to you how bad they were in week 1. They allowed a league high 44.8 yards per drive, a 69.2% third down conversion rate, and the second most points per drive in the entire league. They are historically bad, and this secondary might be the worst part of this entire defense. Look, Daniel Jones probably not going to look great in this game, but he'll at least be good enough, and Malik Neighbors is so good against this defense. This is one of those games, right? The whole offseason, everybody was saying, like, just give Malik Neighbors the ball. He can take care of the rest. Well, I don't know if that's true, but this week, I think it is true. Just get this guy the ball, and against this secondary and this defense, he will take care of the rest. Malik Neighbors in week 2 is going to boom.
Well, talking about that Washington defense again, well, they were lit up last week by Baker Mayfield. Why can't he do it again in week 2? Because he gets an almost as bad, in fact, in some ways maybe worse, Detroit Lions secondary. You think that might not be possible, but think about this. Last season, Detroit allowed not just the most passing yards to quarterbacks, by far the most. They allowed 5,545 passing yards. The next closest was Tampa Bay, 5,081. All right. Detroit gives up yards in bunches. And in fact, Detroit having a pretty good offense might actually work in Baker Mayfield's favor because they might have to continue to throw the ball here. Now, he was really good, in fact, as good as you can get. 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in week 1. And you can say, well, yeah, it was against Washington, but this matchup is just as good. And like I said, they might be forced to pick up the pace and continue to throw it. Except Mike Evans is ageless. Chris Godwin is looking better than ever, fully healthy. And Jalen McMillan already looking good as the third option there. And maybe the running game is even better because they got Bucky Irving to mix in with Rachaad White. And I feel like every year we hear about how the Lions secondary is going to be improved and the defenses. And yet what happened? In week 1 against the Rams, they allowed the second most passing yards, 317, despite the fact that Puka was out half that game. I mean, come on. It's the same old thing here. Mayfield will be totally fine and could have put up even bigger numbers than he did in week 1. So if you're missing Jordan Love, just go out and add him wherever you can. Or if you're streaming quarterback, he's got to be your priority. If you didn't catch all of our start-sit videos at every single position, don't worry, it's all here in this week 2 playlist.